Welcome back. The Ontario government has unveiled its new sex ed curriculum for elementary schools. Premier Doug Ford scrapped the Liberals' version last year and replaced it with an older version that critics said was out of date, failing to address issues like same-sex marriage and gender identity. That changed today when the PCs released their do-over, but the new curriculum contains many of the same elements the Liberals rolled out 4 years ago. And it's drawing criticism from both social conservatives and the opposition MPs. NDP rather. So was it worth the wait? We're back with the Power Panel. Omar, Tim, and Sally. Omar, I'll start with you. Your initial impressions. We were talking in the break that it's interesting that this came out and really doesn't seem to be sort of trying to appease a lot of the social conservatives who demanded this review in the first place.
Well, it's never too late to do the right thing, and I think we've clearly seen a change in tone since Stephen Lecce became the education minister there, and kudos to him. But, I will say that we have gone through now a year of uncertainty where this government and the premier were essentially threatening teachers with financial penalties if they were to continue teaching the 2015 curriculum, which they have now essentially reverted to. So what this makes clear to me is that this was all about politics in the provincial election. It was about rallying the social conservative base of the Ontario PC party, getting them motivated to show up at the polls. But essentially, we've gone through a year of chaos and a year of threats and a year of acrimony for essentially, with some small changes here and there, essentially the same curriculum that Kathleen Wynne brought in 2015.
Fair point, Tim. I mean, there was a lot of acrimony. Teachers were upset. There was that initial snitch line that was put out. If your teacher's teaching this stuff and shouldn't be, they retracted it. But initially that was put out. Was it all for nothing?
I think the right answer came in the end. And look, maybe the whole consultation was necessary. Maybe it was necessary for Doug Ford to have certain conservatives understand that this curriculum, bar some changes that have been made, was the right course of action. You do have social conservatives out. There's a bit of a fight among them. There's always been a fight among them. But you have Charles McFadden, a well-known social conservative who supported the premier, saying, good call, you've done it. He's happy with the opt-out.
I should say that's the one thing that,
provisions.
I doubt Charles read this curriculum or the previous one.
Well, maybe not. And then you have Tanya Graddick Allen, who ran against him, saying it wasn't good. Look, as somebody who's got sex ed at a Christian Brothers school, and it was about a sperm, egg, and a fallopian tube, this is much more advanced. This is, as somebody who has a child going in the school system in September, I am happy that they have done what they have done there. I don't think you could have stepped back. You can only go forward on all of this. And maybe in the end that this shows this premier is prepared to listen. Last thing I'd say, I agree. The politics of this has gotten fascinating because one of the big lines of warfare for the conservatives initially, progressive conservatives, was the fights they wanted to have in the education sector, both around curriculum and with the teachers. Yeah. The new minister, as Omar pointed out, Lecce, has really changed the tone because the other suggestion that is out there now is there may not be a strike with high school teachers. The politics of that, of course, is the federal conservatives don't want that going on at the same time. So Stephen Lecce seems to be one of the first ministers, along with Rod Phillips and perhaps Christine Elliott, who has a little bit of rope with the premier to get some things done.
And the tone is a lot different, Sally, not just in this, but we saw, for example, the premier addressing municipalities earlier this week, sort of a little bit of a mea culpa about the way, it's just fascinating to see how they were threatening stuff with sex ed, they were threatening stuff with funding for municipalities, and all of it, so much of it has been walked back.
Well, it's amazing how quick in just a year they changed the tune. But, drastic and rising unpopularity can do that to a premier in a political party. What they've done here is, and the conservatives, I get it, Tim's saying, they've come to the right place and it shows he's willing to listen. What they've done is a full year of playing politics with the education of children.
With kids,
With kids. And that aside, the amount of money it costs, however much it costs to set up the snitch line, it was $1 million to set up the online poll, all for naught, all to satisfy this social conservative element of his base. And it's just, it's a real waste. All these people who kind of felt up in the air, forcing kids to go to a human rights tribunal to get this looked at. And again, I think this is a really good issue for Andrew Horwath and the opposition. Marit Stiles has been a really, really strong critic. And they now get, along with their allies and teachers and students, and get to claim victory for putting this pressure on. Because make no mistake, if they could have gotten away with it, they would have. You know, it's only bowing to that public pressure that they came to this conclusion, which I'm happy they did, but I don't think they should be congratulated for it.
Well, I'm not sure I'm necessarily congratulating them. I'm thanking them for doing something they should have stuck with originally. But I think the value of the consultation, at least for Conservatives, is to properly understand where Ontarians are on their system, and that
there was a big consultation.
But there was 2 years of consultation.
I know, but we all know
what
we all know what happens there, right? That consultation is jaded by the politics. So until you go out and do your own and then have it validated, look, I think the criticism that Omar and Sally are levying on
they also say they're
is fair,
protector
but I think,
of our tax dollar, right? Like,
well, so
the other thing I just want to I'd point out, Vashi, you know, it goes to the priorities of this government. So they've appointed a special advisor to the Premier on alcohol sales, but we've gone a year without any updates to the sex ed curriculum. So, you know, is booze the priority or is education?
Well, can they do both?
Omar apparently thinks you can only do one thing at a time.
Well,
maybe that's why the Liberals have the trouble they do.
What about
this government seems to be spending an inordinate amount of time on alcohol sales as opposed to other
We only have
issues.
a few minutes left, Omar, but I do want to get your take because in the context of the election that we're going to be talking about a lot over the next 2 months, we have spoken about this sort of quote-unquote Ford factor. Do you think this sort of change in tone, change in action on the part of the Ford government is going to do anything to mute the effect that he's had, the negative effect that he's had on the federal Conservatives in Ontario?
Well, I don't really think it's that much of a change in tone. So I think they got to a decent place today on sex education. But if you look at the announcement that the Premier made to the Association of Municipalities yesterday, I believe.
He's still making the cuts.
They're still making the cuts, right? So there's only two options that are available to municipalities. They can increase property taxes to make up the difference, or they can cut services to make up the difference. So at the end of the day, we're still either
they won't define, but that's there.
Well, there's transition fund, but there's very few details around it, and it's temporary. So, you know, at the end of the day, this is still a government that it's about priorities. They're actually spending more than the Liberals spent in the last budget, but they're cutting in priority areas like healthcare, like in education, and in autism services.
I've only got 15 seconds left. Last word to you, Sally.
You know, as just as somebody with some experience in the difference between the federal parties and provincial sections, I would certainly, if I was Andrew Scheer, be asking him to tone it down in Ontario.
Buy the duct tape.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks to the Power Panel this evening, Sally Hauser, Omar Khan, and Tim Powers. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video. Thanks for watching.